So each of the trainees has its own name. Okay. So we're going to have 3 different names. This one is going to be Terry. This one is going to be Mary. And this one is going to be Patsy. Right? Now the trainees share the variable course code. Okay? The trainees share the course code. There's only one copy of it. Okay, so it prints off 2367, 2367, 2367. Alright, because that's the same number. Alright, it's the same variable. There's no difference in it whatsoever. Now, that means if Patsy comes along and we go Patsy dot course code, changes it to 2222. Okay, that means if Patsy changes the course code, the course code is changed for everyone. Now, if Patsy changes the course code is changed for everyone. Okay, so if I go down here, if I copy and paste these 3, paste this code, go down here, we can see now that the course code is changed to 2, all the 2s. Okay, that's what a static is. Right? Now, what we're doing here is, this is we are accessing a static variable in a non-static way. What does that mean? We're using a trainee object to gain access to the static variable course code, which is not recommended. Okay, now there is another way you can access statics. Okay, here is the static way for accessing statics. So if we go to the, just save that, which is not recommended, no recommended. Now, so I am going to go down here. So you can access, so there's the print statement. So, accessing county or location of course, static location of course. Now, the name of the class is trainee dot location. Okay, you can access static members of a class by going the name of the class followed by the name of the static, be that a static method or be that a static variable. Okay, so I'll put this here. This is accessing a static variable in a static way, which is always the name of the class followed by a static variable or method. Okay, so trainee lot location, because this is what's called static variables, are also called class variables, because they belong to the whole class. They don't belong to one individual. Okay, you all have the same course code here. The course code doesn't belong to each one of you, it belongs to all of you. Okay, you are all going to a course in Galway, so that location doesn't belong to you, it belongs to all of you. Okay, that's a static variable. Now, they are useful there, but there is a fair few rules involved with them. Okay, now, so this is the normal way, so put it here, is how you should normally access statics. Okay, the reason being is because looking at that, you don't know that it's straight away that it's a static method. Okay, if you see the name of the class followed by either a method or a variable, you know that's either a static method or a static variable. Okay, so location is the static variable, Galway. Okay, because you can clearly see that's a static because it says the name of the class followed by location. Yes? Does everyone understand what I'm talking about here now? So the static variable applies to everything, like a course code, like location. What else could be a static variable? Would a PPS number be a static variable? No. The static variable applies to one person.
Like our lecture.
No. Well,
If you
yeah, okay, that is true, yeah. So I'm static.
You belong to us.
Yeah. I belong to the whole class. Also, if you were doing a family, right? If you're doing a family object, there's a static and family object. Now, I don't know in other languages, but I know in English. What do every member in every family have to say? Their second name. Okay? So surname is the static. Alright? No, yeah, I understand. But in English, if you're creating a family object, the surname is going to be a static.
But let's say, okay, my second name, yes?
Yeah.
All our family name is Medaksh. My Medaksha, by Medakshiene, daughter Medakshaide. It's actually ordained, like in English, you putting Mr.
Yeah. I take the word first.
Johns.
Yeah.
So in my case, ending changes. Like in English case, it's Mr., Miss, or Mrs.
But that's in Irish as well. Do you know, Sean, son of Sean. What's that? Mac Dermot, you know? Yeah, Mac. Macron. So it's in Irish as well. Macron would be son of Cron, which is son of three, actually, wouldn't it? Cron is three, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's Mach Sean, it's a H in it.
Yeah.
Machan.
Machan, yeah.
And like, it's Mach Sean really, but there's a H in it.
They have the flint in the night.
Yeah. So it's the same as in Irish, Mac. Or in, do you know Magnus Magnusson?
It's a nice one.
That's Iceland, yeah, isn't it?
They have a son for a son, first name of the father, and then son, like Magnus Magnusson. That means son of Magnus. And for daughter, they have Daude.
A what?
Like a surname
Yeah.
of a daughter is from, so father's name plus Daude.
Okay.
So,
So
yeah,
Magnus
Sweden,
Dauta. Is it?
But Magnus Magnusson, that means son of Magnus. Yeah.
Okay.
Like Russian as well, like say John Johnson. Like his father was Johnson. Like we're not using family name. No, they have, but normally like they call it like John Henderson or something like it. Whose file was that?
That would be really unfortunate name, John Johnson. Jesus, that's very unfortunate. But yeah, you could do statics for all languages. Alright? So a static is anything in your class that can apply to a group of objects. Alright? That's what a static is. Now, we immediately can use a static. Alright? So, if I do this, if I go static int, so I'm in trainee class. Okay? And I am going to go in here, I'm going to make it public. I'm going to make it static. Int counter is equal to 0. Okay? So, if I put the counter inside here. Now, what happens? I create a trainee. Okay, so there are 3 trainees. Tom, Mary, and Patsy. Okay, so I've created my 3 trainees. And that gives a PPS number on. Now, but when it creates Tom, right, this counter is a static. So it doesn't belong to any individual, but any individual can access it. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, just like the course code doesn't belong to any individual, but any individual can access it. Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So, when Tom has been created, he assigns, he does all this stuff. Grant. The last thing he does inside the counter, the last thing he does inside the constructor is that he increments the counter by 1. So the counter is now 1. Now that means it's 1 for all of your trainees. I come along again, create Mary. Does all the things. It assigns a PPS, a name and an age to Mary, and then it increments counter by 1. It now goes to 2 because it's not an instance variable. It's a class variable. It holds its value. Okay? So it's at 2. Now, Patsy creates it. So Patsy gives himself a PPS, a name and an age. The last thing Patsy does is it increments counter by 1. It becomes 3. So what can statics do? Statics can count how many objects have been created. That's the first thing they can do. There's a load of other things they can do as well. Alright? So one of the immediate uses we can use it for is to count how many objects have been created. Okay? Now, so just to prove that it is. So I have 3 objects being created. Okay? Now to prove that this little lad works, I am going, now for a start, let's go back to it again. The access modifiers rules still apply. Okay? Public, actually I can make it, I don't have to make it public. I'll leave it public. Okay, I'll leave it public. Public, so that means that this can be accessed outside of any class. Static means we can access it by going trainee dot counter. Int means it's an int. Okay, so I'm going to access this variable in a static way. So here's how I access the variable in a static way. I'm going to go down here. So I go SYSO. We have created. Now I'm going to access the counter in the trainee class, which is a static variable. So I go TRINEE dot counter. See them there? Counter. Now, as we create a object, as we create a trainee, it increments our counter by 1. Okay? So it's incrementing our counter by 1. It's a static variable. Okay? It's a static variable, so it doesn't belong to any individual person. So if one person changes, so Tom, Mary, and Patsy, each of them, as they're being created, change this value. Okay? When Tom was being created, hold on. Second. So when Tom has been created, it sets the counter to 1. When Mary is created, it sets the counter to 2. When Patsy is created, it sets the counter to 3. That means it's 3 for all of them. Okay? Sorry? No, it's not like a for loop. It's nothing like a for loop. Okay? All that's happening is that each time a trainee is being created, it changes the value of counter. Okay? It keeps, and how does it change it? Each time someone is created, it adds 1 onto this guy here. Okay? And to just show you it's all the same. Yeah.
Because you're ready those created at the moment,
Yeah.
you wouldn't be able to call counter on them because when they were created, counter wasn't there to sign the counter.
Well, when you have them created, counter is assigned. Right? So let's say I go now.
But they were created before you had
Yeah.
counter to the.
Well, they were created as, so when I created Terry, alright, counter was 1. When I created Mary, counter was 2. Actually, I'll show you.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I can understand that any objects created after this would have the counter. Those that were created before the counter was even put in there.
Well, they'd have counter set to 0, right? So before we create any objects, we create objects. Counter is, so I go plus trainee.counter. Okay, it starts off at 0. Where does it get to 0 from? It gets to 0 from here, yeah. Okay, now as we create each one of them, it adds 1 onto it. Okay, so SYSO. After Terry created, counter is, I'll do the same thing again, counter. The next one, after Mary created, counter is trainee.counter. And the last one, this way. So after Patsy created, counter is trainee.counter. Right? Now, to show you that if I go down here and go SYSO, if I go Mary.counter, if I go Patsy.counter, and if we go Terry.counter. Right, before we create trainees, let me change that to. Right, before we create trainees, counter is, let's change that. Now, before we create trainees, counter is 0. Right, so I create Terry. That increments our static counter by 1. After Terry created, counter is 1. Okay, then we go to Mary, increments the static counter by 1, it becomes 2. After Mary created, counter is 2. I create the trainee Patsy, increments the counter by 1. After Patsy created trainee, counter is 3. Okay?
So no, I think what the question was not this. Like we created every person, and on the end we added counter.
Yeah.
And it's more than like before. I mean, like, not by line by line.
Well, no. But what I'm saying is, it's incrementing the counter when the object is created.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay, but I'm just kind of making it more clearer here. That's all I'm doing. So Mary.counter is 3, Patsy.counter is 3, Terry.counter is 3, because whatever the last value was. Okay, so it's just the main usage we have for it to start off with is you can count the objects that have been created. Because very often you're going to have something like a while loop. You have a notion. A while loop is going to be spitting out objects. Or even talk to you a small bit yesterday about something called a stream. If you're getting a stream of objects, you won't have an idea how many objects you've got. So what you do is you have a counter on it. You have a static counter on it. All right. So statics are very, very useful for counters. So I'm just going to put in the comments in the trainee here. Okay, so this is a constructor that takes an int, string, and an int and creates our trainee. Okay, this also increments a static int called counter. Okay, this is a static variable that will count how many trainees are created each time we create each time we create a trainee, a counter will be incremented by 1. No static variables belong to any individual, but to the whole class. Now there's a couple of so they're static variables. Now you can also have static static methods. Okay, so I am going to create what's something a group of people can do together as a group. And that's going on the piss. All right.
Meet.
Yeah, meet.
Can't be only one person.
Meeting. Yeah, a meeting. Yeah. Yeah. I actually have down rioting here, which is true. Okay. Shows you the way I think. Maybe that's more reflection on me, I think. Okay, so you could have meeting. I'm just going to do riot because it's more domestic. Okay, so I'm going to go static void riot. Okay, now there's a couple of rules to do with statics. Okay, so static methods. Static.
We have one that we're dealing with names.
Yeah. We've been using a static method. A static method since the very first day we came in here. Okay. Public static void main string args. Okay. We've been using this since the very day one. And in actual fact, I think we came across once or twice. We came across the rules, but I kind of just brushed them over. Okay. There is a couple of rules. Okay. Now, static methods. So, static methods are the same as static variables in that these methods apply to the class and not to individual objects. Now, so give the example of riot. Okay, as the riot method belongs to everyone in the class, you can't access individual attributes of a particular trainee. Okay, in other words, you can't access instance variables in a static method. Now, what do I mean by that? Alright, now, so get this thing into your head. Write, you can't write by yourself, can you? Can you?
I write.
Okay, you can't have a meeting with yourself. Okay, meeting is something a group does, an individual. So a meeting is not something you do by yourself. All right. Now, you can't write it by yourself. So this method does not apply to an individual. It applies to everyone in this class. Okay. Now, the practicalities means this. So, if I want to print off the age of an employee, that won't work, because this method applies to everyone in the class. So you can't access an individual's age. Okay? You can't access an individual's name. You can't access an individual's age. You can only access other statics inside of a static method. Okay? So I can access counter, I can access course code, and I can access location. So I'll put this here. You can't access instance variables, attributes of an individual trainee in a method that applies to every trainee. Okay, age is an attribute of an individual trainee. Okay, so you can't access the age, you can't access the name, you can't access the PPS number. PPS. So you cannot access. Cannot access this guy. And you cannot access this guy. So we comment out that guy, comment out that guy, comment out that guy. Right? Now what can you access within this class? First of all, we'll say this is the riot, SYSO. This is the static riot method. And we can access the course code individuals. So SYSO static course code is course code. You can access that no problem. Okay. Next one. Static county is plus county. It's going to be Galway. Isn't it county? Location, sorry, it's location. And the last one is static counter is plus counter. Now, so if I want to call this method, I'm going to call this method in a static way. Sorry, there it is. Now, so I'm going to go back to main. And I'm going to go here. So I'm going to go trainee dot, see it there? Riot. Okay, this is calling a static method. Wait, it's class name followed by the method name. Now, that's the correct way to call static methods. But of course, an individual can call. So we have Terry dot riot, but that's not recommended. The main reason is you can't clearly see that that's a static method. Okay, you can't see. So this is calling a static method in a non-static way, which is through a trainee object called Terry. Okay, this is not recommended. I keep saying this. This is not recommended. Now, so I'm going to go back to trainee again. So a static method can only access other statics. Okay, static method can only access other statics. So let's say if we want to access a PPS number, a name, and an age, the only way we can access those three variables is if we create another trainee inside it. So I'm creating a trainee Roger is equal to new trainee, and trainee takes a PPS, a name, and an int. So it's not PPS, is it? It is. So PPS is name is Roger, his age is 34. Alright, that's the only way we can access instance variables inside the static method. Okay, by the way, which is the case I'm going to switch back to main. See here, the only way we can access static or instance variables inside the static main method is to create an object. Okay, you can't access instance variables directly inside static methods. You can only access static variables and other static methods directly inside a static method. That's why here in main I'm always creating objects. You never see me trying to just access some variable. For instance, if I have a variable up here, we'll call this int main num is equal to 56. If I try to access main num down here, can't do it because that is an instance variable. This is a static method. This is a static method. You can't access an instant variable in a static method. Okay? You can only access statics inside a static method. Okay? Also, when you're inside the method, you can't use the static keyword either. Okay? So that's another one. Local variables can't be statics. Which makes sense because a static variable applies to all your objects. Okay? How can you have a local variable? You know, it's just not. It hurts your head to even think about it. Okay? It can't be done. Go on for a fag. You can't believe it. I'm telling you to smoke.
Anyway, need 5 minutes early, 1 hour.
If you pop your clogs one day in the class, that's no fault. It's a smoke, so that's fine.
Static classes are
Yeah, but we don't do them.
that allows you access to its members without having to instantiate an object.
Exactly. But you can do that with statics anyway. But yeah. That's what you use.
Well, yeah, it just makes everything static.
Yeah, that's all it does. Okay, so we're in the trainee class. And I'm going to create another static method. I'm going to call this method static void swarm.
Frozen.
I'm frozen. There I am. So I'm in the trainee class, static void swarm. Okay. I'm just going to have SYSO. We are swarming. Okay. So you can access static static methods directly inside other static methods. So we're in a static method, so I can go SWARM. Now just thinking over there, so if we're doing out something to represent all of you, the trainees class, I'd be a static. That would be correct. So we'd have another class called person. Or trainee could extend person. Actually, that's probably the best idea. So you could have a person class, and then trainee would extend person. Then you'd have me, teacher, lecturer, whatever. Teacher extends person, but I'd be a static. So I'd be a static lecturer node. Okay? Because I apply to all of you. Okay, so anything that applies to all of you is a static. So you can access static methods directly inside other static methods. That works fine. However, if I have another method, I'm going to have another method called static void learn. Okay, you can't access, so learn, it's not a static, sorry, not a static. Now, the learn method doesn't apply to everyone, it applies to one person each. Okay, so I can't go learn. Okay, why? Because this is an instance method, or this is an instance method, I think is the correct term. Method. Each trainee has their own learn method. Okay, so we can't do that. Now, it turns out that instant methods can access both statics and non-statics. Okay, so a static method can only access statics, whereas an ordinary instance method, they can access both statics and non-statics. So we can access the age. So non-static age is plus age. Static, so SYSO. Static counter is plus counter. And we can call riot. We can call swarm. And I'm going to create a non-static method down here, void eat. And it can call eat. Okay, so this guy here is a static method. This guy here is a static method. This is a non-static method. Yeah. So a non-static method can call both statics and non-statics. A static method can only call statics and nothing else. Sorry, can only access statics and nothing else. If you want to access instant variables inside a static method, you have to first create an object of the trainee class. Then you can access the age of the trainee, the PPS of the trainee, and the weight of the trainee. Everyone with me so far? Yes? Okay. Now, static methods operate. They're very useful for something called creating utility methods. So I'll show you an example of a utility method. So go to new, still in the same class, go to new, go to class. I want you to create a class, call it maths. M-A-T-H-S. Maths. And we're going to create two static methods. First one is going to be public static void add int num2, and this is going to go int sum is equal to num plus num2, print statement, sum is the sum. I'm going to create another one, public static void multiply int num2, int sum is equal to num divided by num2 SISO numbers multiplied is the sum. One other feature of statics that are going to be new to you. Right, quick question. Course code. Course code for this is 5768 or something like that, 5789 or something like that, I don't know what it is. So, that's the course code for this course. If there was no one on the course, would that variable still exist? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's another thing about statics, is that an object doesn't have to exist to call the methods or to call the attributes. What do I mean by that? So here we've got two static methods. Now the methods are called add and multiply. Right? I'll show you what we can do. Right, I'm going to go back to main. Okay. And I can go maths dot add, and I can throw through two numbers. I can go maths dot multiply. I'm going to throw through two numbers, 56 and 345. Now, I don't have to create an object of the maths class to use a static method. Okay, so I'll put it here. You do not have to create a maths object to call the static methods add and multiply. In fact, you can have a class with nothing in it but static methods, and never create an object of that class, and you use these what are called utility methods. Now it's just a term. Now, because folks, we have been using a static method. The very first thing we did was a static method, because let me show you a static method. That guy, system.out.println. So that there is a class called the system class, okay, and inside the system class, now the out part, right, so that is a class, okay. There is a something of type out. Out is an object, okay. So you have a class, like for instance, let's say if we had a dog class, okay, and inside the dog class we had a cat object. Yes? Inside the dog class we had a cat object. That cat object was a static. His name was Tibbles, and he has a method called eat. So the cat has an eat method. Alright? So you could call the eat method that the cat does inside the dog class by going dog dot Tibbles dot eat. I would not have to create a dog. I would not have to create a cat. That's exactly what's going on here. Alright? System is a class. Out is a class. Out is a static member. Okay? Because this guy is a static, I can call the method without having to create either a system object or an out object. You just call it directly. Okay? That is class, object, method. The object is static. Okay? So in effect, that from day one, that is a static method. Okay? I don't need to create a system object. I don't have to go system, my system is equal to new system. I don't have to go out, my out is equal to new out. I just can do this. Okay, I'm going to show us how we can do it in our own program, or we can call from another package. That is a static method. It's a static method, so we don't have to create a system object, we don't have to create an out object. Alright? Do you see the usefulness of that? If that wasn't a static method, if that was just an ordinary class, I'd have to create a system object. I'd also have to create an out object. Then I'd have to call the println method from the out object. So you'd have to put in 6 or 7 lines of code for each print statement. That is a static method. Simple as that. Println is a static method. So you don't need to create a system object to call static method, as we've done here. Scroll down here. Maths, I didn't create a maths object. Don't need to create a maths object. So you can call a static method by going the name of the class followed by the method. Because statics exist regardless whether you have an object or not. Course code exists regardless whether you have any students or not. The location of the course exists regardless whether you have any students or not. I exist regardless whether you have any students or not. So a static exists regardless whether you have actually any objects. You don't need to create an object to access the methods, static methods of a class. In actual fact, I recommend just, if you're calling static methods, this is calling them a static way. That's the way you should do it. So you can imagine a class that's going to have all your mathematical calculations in it. That does all sorts of calculations. You could have 20 different methods that you're calling over and over again. You could save them as 20 static methods. Your class could be called mycalc. Okay. You might have one complicated calculation, one method that calculates your PPS, calc PPS. Okay. So to call that static method, all you have to say is mycalc.calc PPS. I don't have to create a mycalc object. I'm going to show you further how it works. We're going to create another package. So we're going to create another package here. So new package. This is going to be com.employee again. And inside com.employee, I'm going to put in test. Finish. Now, we're in a different package to maths, all right? But we can access the maths method directly. We don't even need to do an import, all right? So let me just show you. Void do something. So I can go com.gretb dot maths dot add. I can put in my two numbers. I can do the multiplication one, com.g, see they all come up there, gretb dot maths dot multiply. Two numbers, 234, 233, multiply by 1234. Alright, so you should be able to see system that out. That println. Okay. You can imagine that's a package. Imagine that's a class. Imagine that's a static. This is a class. Imagine this is a package. Imagine this is a class. Imagine this is a static method. Okay. There is other methods that we've used already. I'm trying to think, what ones have we used? We've used dot length. No. So statics. What are statics great for? If you're just going to have methods that you're going to be using over and over again, doing some calculation, any class can call them, make them static. Statics are brilliant for having these little methods that can do virtually anything. Right? You don't need to create. I didn't create a maths object there. I called the maths. I called the add static add method directly.
I think it's some way to print. So we go back to main, yes, and we'll print it.
Well, so do something. Let's say now you're regularly calculating someone's tax-free allowance for the year. Okay, and we don't have an object, we don't have a person class, right? We just want to calculate tax-free allowance based on certain calculations. Okay, so we could have this in a class called tax. So we could have a class called tax. Okay, and inside tax there's a method called tax-free allowance. And it takes in, let's say, wages. And it's a static. All I have to do to call that method anywhere, and it's public. all I have to do to call that method from anywhere is quite simply go tax dot tax free, and we supply the wages, which is 126,000 a year. Nice. Okay, so you can call the method from anywhere. We will be doing a lot more. In actual fact, when we're coming to the exams, we're going to have large files that are going to consist of just questions. Each one of the questions is going to be saved as a static method. Hopefully you'll be more apart again. Okay? Now, that's statics. Okay? There's nothing more to it. That's them. Alright? So, now there is a static class, but that's not covered in the exam. Okay? All a static class is just basically everything inside the class is going to be static. So you can mark a class as being static. Alright? It gets a small bit complicated when you do that. So we're not going to cover it. Is that okay, everyone? Alright, so we're finished for today. That was finished for today. So I will